The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by distant stars that twinkled like scattered diamonds against the black canvas of the universe. Through this cosmic wilderness, 12 sleek silver warships moved, in perfect harmony, their hulls gleaming under the light of nearby suns. The Veltari hunting fleet had maintained this same formation for countless generations, each ship positioned precisely in an ancient circle that their ancestors had perfected. Over 10,000 years of tradition. Captain Krelver stood motionless on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty His 6 golden eyes tracked every movement of the massive creature gliding through space ahead of them. The beast was unlike anything else in the known galaxy. Nearly a kilometer long, its body appeared to be carved from living crystal that pulsed, with an inner light that shifted from deep blue to brilliant white in mesmerizing waves. The Veltari called it the Great Devourer, though none of their ancient texts explained exactly why it had earned such a terrifying name. Captain, the creature maintains its heading toward the Outer Rim sectors, announced Lieutenant Zekmar from his tactical station. His clawed fingers danced across holographic displays that showed the pursuit route extending far beyond their home territory. We have been following for 3 full cycles now. Our fuel reserves are down to 60%. The bridge hummed with quiet tension. Crew members exchanged worried glances when they thought their captain wasn't looking. This hunt had already taken them farther from Veltari space than any expedition in recent memory. Their families, their homes, their entire civilization lay many light years behind them now. Growing more distant with each passing hour, Krelvers flexed his 4 arms, each ending in hands tipped with razor-sharp claws that could tear through metal plating. His people were born hunters, evolved from predators that had once stalked the crystal forests of their homeworld. The thrill of the chase ran in their very blood, passed down through generations of warriors who had never known defeat in the ancient ritual of the Great Hunt. But something felt wrong about this particular chase. The Great Devourer moved with purpose, choosing its path too carefully, too deliberately. When previous hunts had taken place, the space leviathans fled in panic, desperately seeking escape routes that didn't exist. This creature seemed almost as if it knew exactly where it was going and why. "Sir, should we consider returning to base for refueling?" asked Ensign Colthus, one of the younger officers who had only recently graduated from the academy. "We could pick up the trail again once we've resupplied." A dangerous silence fell across the bridge. Several senior officers turned to stare at the young ensign with expressions that could have frozen plasma. Breaking off a great hunt was not just against protocol, it was considered a mark of shame that would follow a warrior for the rest of their life. Krelvers slowly turned his massive head toward the ensign. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of tradition. "The sacred hunt continues until the prey is taken, or we fall in glory. There is no third option, young one. Our ancestors tracked these beasts across entire star systems without complaint. We will not dishonor their memory by showing weakness now." The Great Devourer suddenly pulsed brighter, its crystalline body catching and reflecting the light of nearby stars. It began to accelerate, moving faster than anything that size should have been able to move. The creature's path led directly toward a dense asteroid field that stretched for millions of kilometers in every direction. "All ships, increase speed," Krelvers commanded. "Maintain hunting formation. Prepare plasma burst cannons for herding. Pattern 7. The Voltari fleet responded instantly, their ships moving as one organism. Engines fled brighter as they pushed their vessels to match the Great Devourer's increased pace. The asteroid field loomed ahead like a massive wall of tumbling rock and ice. Some chunks as small as pebbles, others large enough to house entire cities. Navigator Velshin studied her instruments with growing concern. "Captain, that asteroid field extends far beyond our scanning range. If we follow the creature inside, we may become trapped ourselves." Krelvers watched the Great Devourer glide effortlessly between the massive rocks, its crystalline body seeming to glow even brighter as it disappeared deeper into the dangerous maze. Every instinct he had developed over decades of military service told him this was a trap, but the sacred traditions of his people demanded that he continued the pursuit. Tactical officer's voice cut through his thoughts. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy readings from within the asteroid field. The patterns don't match anything in our databases." As the 12 Veltari warships entered the asteroid field in their perfect hunting circle, none of them realized they were no longer the predators in this ancient dance of life and death. The Great Devourer had led them exactly where it wanted them to go, and now the real hunt was about to begin. The moment the Veltari fleet entered the heart of the asteroid field, everything changed. The great devourer, which had been gliding peacefully through space like a gentle giant, suddenly transformed into something far more terrifying. Its crystalline body erupted with blinding light as it spun around with impossible speed, facing the hunting fleet that had been pursuing it. For days, Captain Krelvers felt his blood turn to ice as he stared at the creature's transformed appearance. Where before it had seemed almost beautiful in its alien grace, now it pulsed with raw, predatory energy. The internal lights that had been so mesmerizing were now revealed as something far more sinister. They weren't just pretty decorations. They were weapons charging up for an attack. All ships, emergency maneuvers. Krelvers shouted, but his words were barely out of his mouth when the first wave hit them. A ripple of distorted space erupted from the great devourer's core, moving outward like an invisible tsunami. The gravitational wave struck the Moonblade first, Captain Jerko's ship crumpling like paper as forces beyond imagination compressed its hull into twisted metal. The screams of her crew cut across the communication channels for just a moment, before the ship imploded completely, leaving nothing but scattered debris floating among the asteroids. "What in the seven hells is that thing?" Lieutenant Zekmar gasped from his station, his claws frantically working the controls as warning alarms shrieked throughout the bridge. The great devourer wasn't finished. Its body began to glow with a different kind of energy, and suddenly massive electromagnetic pulses burst outward in all directions. The Starfire shuddered as the invisible waves washed over them, causing lights to flicker and systems to spark with electrical overload. "Weapons offline," reported the gunnery officer. "The pulse fried our plasma cannons." Across the fleet, the same thing was happening to every ship. The Starhammer, commanded by veteran Captain Moldar, tried to retreat but found its engines completely dead. The electromagnetic pulse had shut down every major system on the ship, leaving it drifting helplessly as the great devourer turned its attention toward this new victim. Krelvers watched in horror as invisible forces began to tear the Starhammer apart piece by piece. The hull plates were ripped away like someone peeling an orange, exposing the inner decks to the vacuum of space. Captain Moldar's final transmission was cut short as his ship broke apart, the crew compartments spinning away into the asteroid. "Field like discarded toys, Captain." Navigator Velshina's voice was filled with terror as she stared at her instruments. "I'm reading massive energy buildups from at least 6 different points around the creature. It's not just one weapon system, it's got multiple ways to kill us." The truth hit Krelvers like a physical blow. This wasn't a mindless beast they had been hunting. The great devourer was intelligent, possibly more intelligent than they were. It had been studying their formation, learning their tactics, understanding exactly how they moved and fought. For 3 full cycles, it had been playing with them, leading them exactly where it wanted them to go. "It was hurting us," whispered Ensign Colthus, his young voice barely audible over the chaos erupting around them. "We weren't the hunters. We never were." The asteroid field, which they had seen as an obstacle to navigate around, was actually the perfect killing ground. The massive rocks provided cover for the creature while limiting the Veltari ship's ability to maneuver. Every advantage they had possessed in open space was now turned against them. 2 more ships, the Voidcutter and Starpias, tried to break formation and escape through a gap between 2 large asteroids. The great devourer responded by extending what looked like tendrils of pure energy. These glowing appendages wrapped around both ships and began to squeeze. The hulls groaned and buckled under the pressure before finally giving way, spilling atmosphere and crew into the cold vacuum. Captain Krelvers realized with growing dread that their sacred hunting formation, perfected over 10,000 years of tradition, had become a death trap. By maintaining their circular pattern, they had made themselves predictable targets. The creature knew exactly where each ship would be at any given moment. "Break formation," he commanded desperately. "All ships scatter and find cover among the asteroids." But it was too late for coordinated maneuvers. The electromagnetic pulses had damaged their communication arrays, and static filled the channels where clear orders should have been transmitted. Half the fleet couldn't even hear his commands, while the other half was dealing with their own system failures. The Dawnbreaker and Nightfall managed to respond to his order, but as they broke away from the formation, the great devourer demonstrated yet another terrifying ability. Parts of its crystalline body began to separate, creating smaller but equally deadly entities that pursued the fleeing ships, like hungry predators chasing wounded prey. Only 6 ships remained from the original 12, and Krelvers could see in his tactical display that they were all showing critical damage. Life support systems were failing, weapons were offline, and their engines were running on emergency power only. The creature moved through the asteroid field with terrible purpose, selecting its next victims with the patience of a master hunter that knew its prey had nowhere left to run. The fabric of space rippled and tore as the merchant freighter Iron Phoenix burst out of hyperspace like a bullet fired from a cosmic gun. Captain Du Hyen Kim felt his stomach lurch as the ship's artificial gravity struggled to compensate for the violent transition back into normal space. Coffee cups rattled on their magnetic holders, and loose tools scattered across the deck as the vessel shuddered to a halt at the edge of what appeared to be a massive asteroid field. "Well, that was rougher than usual," muttered Ji-Woo Park from her engineering station, her dark hair falling across her face as she hunched over a maze of glowing control panels. Her fingers moved with practiced precision across the holographic displays that showed the ship's vital systems. "Hyperspace exit was clean, but I'm picking up some seriously weird energy readings out there." Du Hyen rubbed his tired eyes and stretched in his captain's chair. They had been hauling mining equipment and medical supplies to the outer colonies for 3 weeks straight, and he was looking forward to finally reaching their destination. The Iron Phoenix wasn't much to look at, just a standard cargo hauler with reinforced hull plating and oversized engines, but she had carried them safely through more dangerous situations than he cared to remember. "Define weird," he said, pulling up the sensor data on his personal display. What he saw made him sit up straight in his chair. "Captain, I'm reading multiple ship explosions and some kind of massive energy source about 50,000 kilometers ahead," Ji-Woo reported, her voice growing more concerned with each passing second. "The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases. And those ships, they don't look human." Minho Lee, their pilot, was already adjusting the main view screen to get a better look at whatever was happening in the distance. As the image focused, all 3 humans fell silent. Through the scattered asteroids, they could see sleek silver warships that looked like they had been carved from liquid metal. The vessels moved with an alien grace that no human ship could match, their hulls gleaming with technology that seemed centuries ahead of anything Earth had ever produced. But the truly shocking sight was what was attacking them. A massive crystalline creature, easily the size of a small moon, moved through space with impossible fluidity. Its translucent body pulsed with internal light that shifted through every color of the rainbow, creating patterns that were both beautiful and terrifying. "Holy Mother of ... Minho whispered, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the pilot controls. "What is that thing?" As they watched, invisible forces erupted from the crystal creature, and 2 more alien warships simply crumpled, like tin cans being crushed by an invisible giant. The remaining vessels fired back with weapons that lit up space with brilliant plasma bursts, but their attacks seemed to barely scratch the monster's surface. "It's some kind of space whale," Ji-Woo said in amazement. "But it's fighting back. Those alien ships are getting torn apart out there." Du Hyen studied the tactical display more carefully, noting how the surviving alien vessels maintained their formation even as their comrades died around them. There was something almost noble about the way they fought, never breaking ranks, never fleeing even when facing impossible odds. It reminded him of old stories his grandfather used to tell about Korean soldiers who held their positions against overwhelming enemy forces, choosing honor over survival. "We should jump away," Minho urged, his voice tight with fear. "Captain, that thing could swat us like an insect. We're just a cargo hauler. We don't even have real weapons." It was true. The Iron Phoenix was equipped with nothing more than mining charges for blasting through asteroid fields and some basic industrial equipment for loading cargo. Against a creature that could crush advanced alien warships, they would last about as long as a paper airplane in a hurricane. But Du Hyen couldn't stop watching those alien vessels as they continued their desperate fight. Each ship represented hundreds, maybe thousands of lives. Beings with families, dreams, hopes for the future. Just like humans, they were facing extinction, and there was no one coming to help them. "No," he said quietly, his hand moving toward the weapon controls. "That would activate their mining charges. Those beings are fighting for their lives. We don't abandon people in need." Minho turned in his pilot seat, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Captain, are you serious? We're one small freighter against something that's destroying an entire alien fleet. What can we possibly do?" Du Hyen stood up from his captain's chair and walked to the main view screen, pressing his palm against the cool metal surface. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see another alien ship being torn apart by invisible forces, its crew's final moments playing out in silent tragedy against the backdrop of stars. "Maybe nothing," he admitted, "but I'd rather die trying." To help than live knowing I ran away when people needed me. Jiwoo looked up from her engineering station, a small smile playing across her lips despite the danger they were about to face. You know what? Count me in. Besides, we've got something those fancy alien ships don't have. What's that? Minho asked. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten, she replied with a grin, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. Du-Hyan felt a surge of pride in his crew. They might just be cargo haulers flying a beat-up freighter through the outer reaches of space, but they had something that no amount of advanced technology could replace. The human spirit that refused to give up, no matter how impossible the odds. The Iron Phoenix burst into the battle zone like a meteor gone completely insane. Du-Hyan had pushed the engines far beyond their safety limits, and the entire ship groaned and shuddered as it accelerated toward the massive crystalline creature that was systematically destroying the alien fleet. Warning lights flashed red across every surface of the bridge, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. Emergency venting in progress. Jiwoo shouted over the deafening roar of escaping atmosphere. We're losing life support containment. Perfect, Du-Hyan yelled back, yanking hard on the ship's controls. We need to look as crazy as possible. The Iron Phoenix began spinning end over end in a wild corkscrew pattern that would have made even the most experienced stunt pilot sick to his stomach. Cargo containers broke loose from their magnetic clamps and went flying out of the ship's rear bay doors, creating a trail of spinning metal boxes that spread out behind them like a deadly comet's tail. Minho gripped his pilot controls so tightly his knuckles had gone completely white. Captain, I can't maintain this flight pattern much longer. The structural integrity is failing. Just a little longer, Du-Hyan replied, his eyes fixed on the great devourer ahead of them. The creature had been focused on crushing the remaining alien warships, but now it was turning its attention toward this new, completely unpredictable threat that had just appeared from nowhere. Through the chaos of spinning debris and venting gases, Du-Hyan could see the alien ships more clearly now. They were beautiful in their own way, sleek and graceful with hull designs that seemed to flow like liquid metal, but they were also following predictable patterns, moving in formation like dancers performing a deadly ballet that the crystal creature had already learned to counter. Mining charges armed and ready, Jiwoo announced from her station. But Captain, these are designed for blasting through asteroids, not fighting space monsters. Then we'll just have to get creative, Du-Hyan replied, launching the first salvo of mining charges directly at the Great Devourer's nearest appendage. The charges detonated in brilliant flashes of orange and white fire, each explosion creating a shockwave that rippled across the creature's crystalline surface. The Great Devourer reeled backward, its smooth attack pattern disrupted as it tried to process what had just happened. For the first time since the battle had begun, the creature seemed confused. It's working, Minho shouted. In amazement, the thing doesn't know how to react to us. Du-Hyan grinned and reached for more unconventional weapons. He activated the ship's emergency flare system, designed to signal for help during emergencies, and fired them directly at the creature's glowing core. The bright red flares exploded like fireworks against the monster's body, creating a dazzling light show that seemed to interfere with its ability to focus on its other targets. Now let's really confuse it, he said, activating the ship's waste recycling system. Jiwoo stared at him in disbelief. You're going to use our toilet system as a weapon. The recycling system uses high-pressure jets to process waste materials, Du-Hyan explained, routing the system's output through the ship's maneuvering thrusters. If we reverse the flow and pump it through our attitude control jets, we can create completely random thrust vectors that no computer could ever predict. The result was spectacular. The Iron Phoenix began moving in ways that defied every law of physics and common sense. It would suddenly dart left, then spin upward, then dive down at impossible angles while continuing to fire mining charges and emergency flares in all directions. The ship looked like it was being piloted by someone who had never seen a spacecraft before, and was just pressing buttons at random. The Great Devourer, which had been methodically destroying the alien fleet using tactics it had learned over the course of the long chase, suddenly found itself facing something it had never encountered before: pure, concentrated chaos. Every time it tried to predict where the human ship would go next, the Iron Phoenix would do something completely different. Captain Elvis, watching from the bridge of his damaged flagship, could hardly believe what he was seeing. The tiny human vessel was dancing around the Great Devourer like an annoying insect, disrupting the creature's concentration and giving his remaining ships their first breathing room in hours. Incredible, whispered Lieutenant Sekmar. They're fighting without any pattern at all. No formation, no strategy, no predictable movements. It's pure madness, and it's working, Krelvis realized. All vessels coordinate with the human ship, abandon formation and follow their lead. The surviving Veltori warships, trained for 10,000 years to fight in perfect formation, suddenly found themselves doing something they had never done before. Improvising, they scattered in all directions, each ship choosing its own path and its own targets. Copying the humans' chaotic approach, the Starfire dove beneath the Great Devourer and fired its plasma cannons at point-blank range. The Void Hunter spun around a large asteroid and attacked from above. The Dawnseeker actually collided with one of the floating cargo containers from the Iron Phoenix, and used the impact to change direction in a completely unexpected way. For the first time since the battle began, the Great Devourer's attacks were missing their targets. The creature's sophisticated intelligence, which had been studying and countering the aliens' organized tactics, couldn't adapt fast enough to this new style of completely random warfare. "Keep it up," Duhayan shouted into his communicator, hoping the alien ships could understand him. "Don't let it figure out what we're doing next, because we don't know either." The battle had turned into something that looked more like a cosmic dance party than a military engagement. Human and alien ships weaved through the asteroid field in patterns that would have given any military strategist a headache. But somehow, it was working. The Great Devourer, which had been systematically destroying the Veltari fleet just minutes earlier, now seemed confused and disoriented as it tried to track targets that moved without any logical pattern. Jiwoo was hunched over her engineering console, her eyes scanning readouts that were unlike anything she had ever seen before. "Captain, I'm getting some really strange energy readings from that creature," she called out over the chaos of battle. "It's not just attacking us, it's actually absorbing energy from somewhere." "What kind of energy?" Duhayan asked, spinning the Iron Phoenix in another impossible maneuver that sent more cargo containers flying toward the crystalline monster. "That's the weird part," Giwu replied, her fingers dancing across holographic displays as she analyzed the data streaming in from their sensors. Every time the alien ships fired their weapons in formation, the creature seemed to get stronger. But now that everyone's fighting randomly, it's actually getting weaker. Minho, who was fighting to keep the ship under control while Du threw it around like a toy, suddenly understood. It's feeding on their organized attacks. The thing gets energy from predictable patterns. "That's it," Jiwoo shouted, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "It's an order parasite. The creature literally feeds on structured tactics and systematic behaviors. That's why it was drawn to the alien fleet's formation. They were like a giant energy source just waiting to be consumed." Duhayan felt a surge of triumph as the pieces fell into place. The Great Devourer hadn't been hunting the Veltari ships for food or territory. It had been feeding on their organized military tactics like a cosmic vampire that drained energy from order and predictability. "Time to give it some serious indigestion," he said with a grin, reaching for one of the ship's most dangerous systems. The Iron Phoenix had an artificial gravity generator that was primarily used to keep the crew comfortable during long cargo runs. But Duhayan had always wondered what would happen if he overloaded it and reversed the polarity. Now seemed like the perfect time to find out. "Jiwoo, reroute all available power to the gravity generator," he ordered. "I want to create the biggest space-time distortion this old ship can manage." "Captain, that could tear us apart," she warned, but her hands were already moving across the controls. The generator wasn't designed for that kind of stress. "Then we better make it count," Duhayan replied, activating the modified system. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Space around the Iron Phoenix began to warp and twist as the overloaded gravity generator created a localized distortion in the fabric of reality itself. The Great Devourer, which had been reaching toward them with one of its crystalline appendages, suddenly recoiled as if it had been struck by lightning. For the first time since the battle began, the creature actually screamed a sound that somehow traveled through the vacuum of space and made every human and alien crew member feel like their bones were vibrating. The Great Devourer writhed in what appeared to be genuine pain as its feeding mechanism was disrupted by pure, concentrated randomness. Captain Krelvis, watching from the bridge of his damaged flagship, finally understood what the humans had discovered. "All ships, abandon formation protocols immediately," he commanded over the communication channels. "Fight like the humans, fight with complete madness." The surviving Veltari warships, which had been trained for 10,000 years to operate in perfect military formation, suddenly began doing things their instructors would have considered insane. The Starfire flew upside down while firing its plasma cannons in random directions. The Void Hunter began spinning like a top while launching missiles at nothing in particular. The Dawnseeker actually flew backward while shooting over its shoulder. The combined fleet swarmed around the Great Devourer in a whirlwind of completely unpredictable attacks. Every time the creature tried to adapt to one ship's pattern, that ship would do something entirely different. The Leviathan, which had grown stronger and more confident with each organized attack it had absorbed, now found itself starving as it tried to feed on pure chaos. "It's working," Minho shouted, as he watched the creature's internal lights begin to dim. "The thing is actually getting weaker." Duhayan noticed something else on his tactical display, a nearby neutron star that was pulling everything in the area toward it with incredible gravitational force. "All ships, this is Captain Kim," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Drive it toward that neutron star. If we can get it caught in the gravity well, we won't have to destroy it." The combined human and alien fleet worked together to herd the confused and weakened Great Devourer toward the neutron star. The creature, unable to feed on their chaotic energy signatures, grew weaker with each passing moment. When it finally crossed the point of no return, the neutron star's immense gravitational pull caught it and began drawing it inexorably toward the dense stellar core, rather than being destroyed. The Great Devourer would be safely contained in an orbit around the neutron star where it could exist without threatening anyone else. It was a solution that satisfied both the humans' desire to preserve life and the Veltari's need to end the threat. As the battle finally ended, Captain opened a communication channel to the human ship. His voice carried a mixture of gratitude and amazement that transcended the language barrier between their species. "Captain Kim, your people have shown us something our ancestors never learned in 10,000 years of warfare," he said. "Would you consider teaching us this new way of fighting? Not as our subordinates, but as our guides in the art of controlled chaos." Duhayan looked around at his small crew, Ji-Woo with her brilliant engineering mind that had figured out the creature's weakness, Minho with his incredible piloting skills that had kept them alive through impossible maneuvers, and felt a surge of pride in what they had accomplished together. "We'd be honored, Captain," he replied. "After all, sometimes the best way to win is to throw out the rulebook entirely." As the Veltari fleet and the Iron Phoenix prepared to jump to hyperspace together, they carried with them the knowledge that humanity's greatest strength wasn't superior technology or ancient wisdom, but their stubborn refusal to accept that anything was impossible. The end.